Welcome, folks, to another episode of the Exposed Vet Productions weekly show. My name is John Stacy. They call me Jay Bassard. My co-host today on this beautiful June 12th, 2025 is Mr. Ray Cobb out of the great state of Tennessee, close to Alabama, so I call it Talabama. How you doing, Ray?
I'm doing great. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good today. Been a busy day, but been hot outside, and but it's getting there. You
Yeah,
know,
we had
I
a
mean,
warm day here, and I ended up spending the morning at the VA in the dental office. So got that taken
oh,
started. Well, no, all they had to do was just a little preliminary work today. So my big day is going to be July the 24th, I think. So we
oh.
got to go have some time here to get ready for all of that, and then looking forward to it. So we'll go from there.
Well, that's Helga's House of Pain. I got to go here about the same time you do. Matter of fact, maybe a week later and have some stuff done. And I was at the VA yesterday. I got to go back again tomorrow. So it's a never-ending trip back and forth. Of course, the car knows the way now. So,
Yeah, there you
so
go.
I wanted to get back to basics today. Um, what I'm thinking about, what we're talking about, discussed earlier. Let's just go straight, flat, basic. Uh, I'm talking step one. Uh, all you vets out there that've been discharged from service or that in service, and you're thinking about filing a VA claim, or you're been out of service for a while and wonder why you haven't filed one, or you're thinking about filing one, we're going to go through the steps today. And I think it's always easy, to refresh back um, every once in a while to go back and just kind of review what we can go into what we've done, or we can recommend what they should do. So Ray, what on your opinion, what is the first basic step to filing an original claim? You've never filed a claim before.
Well, the first thing I recommend the veterans to do is to actually call the 1-800 number. I think it's 627-1000 or 827-1000.
827, yeah,
Okay.
827.
Call that number and tell them you want to do an intent to file. And that intent to file starts your clock. You have 1 year from that date to file your claim. So while you're looking in the claim and seeing what it may be, that gives you the opportunity to get in there and get it ready to go. Too many claims are filed in our area, and I'm sure it must be nationally, that are not ready to be filed. They're not ready for a decision. Now, you don't have
Hmm.
to file it as ready for a decision. I don't like that route. I like the standard route, but that's just a personal preference. But you do have
Right.
to get things ready. And the first thing is to do an intent to file. You don't have to say what you're going to file on. You may have two or three things, but you can just say, I want to do an intent to file. You can do it by phone, and they'll follow up with you within a week, and you'll get a letter in the mail giving you the date that you requested the intent to file and telling you that you have 1 year to file your claim. That's the first thing that I recommend that they do.
The only caveat that I can say there on that situation is you have an intent to file. Make sure everything you file for that intent to file is on that initial 526.
Correct.
In that way, yeah. Because if you have any separate claims like that, then it could negate your intent to file for that area itself only, and not what you've already filed.
And that makes a difference. I mean, for example, if it takes you 5 or 6 months to see your doctors and to get all the information together, and you're doing it on three or four different claims, then you need to get all those in at the same time so that your start date is that same date. And you may be talking about, well, if you're at 100%, that's $4,000. If you
Hmm.
finally get a decision after 10 or 11 months, that's $44,000 in your pocket. So it's really important to get all of those claims in together at the same time. So you really need to get on the bandwagon and make your mind up. I'm going to do this, and then get after it and put it together. One web page that I think is great for helping individuals is James Cripp's web page, VA the Redneck Way. You follow his directions on how to file the claim and how to do it, and you'll probably be okay. I know of three or four guys around here that had used that web page and used that direction, and it turned up, and they were approved the first go around. And they took 8 or 9 months from the time they put their intent to file in to get all the documentation and things that they wanted and felt like
Hmm.
they needed to win their claim. And
Right.
I think that made the difference between them winning it and not winning it.
Hmm. There's other resources available too. There's a Facebook page called the Veterans Claims Assistance Group, and it was started by a guy named Doug Haynes. He's an accredited appeals agent, and he started that, and he's got several different sites that he uses to actually control, what they do. And there's a lot of folks on there that are agents. Even got some VA employees on there, and they come on, they help out answer questions. It's pretty good, pretty good Facebook site. And you can join that group. It's a Facebook group, and you can ask questions, and you'll probably get your question answered. You can also go through the archives of the page and look, and your question might have already been answered as far as that. But
Probably has. I mean, there's been
mhm,
thousands and thousands of cases, and so they've
mhm,
probably already been answered. I would hate to think there's a question that's going to come up that at least hadn't come up once before. Um,
mhm,
you know,
and he's also got another site that he made called howdisabilityworks.com, how VA disability works. Uh, that thing covers everything. If you go there, you ever been to that site, Ray?
no, I haven't. I need to do that.
You need to go into that site. You want some actual information, go into that site. I mean, this is probably the most comprehensive, easily explained website when it comes to those issues. And you can get an education like no other if you read this, because this guy's pretty sharp.
Good. I'll get that from you and
Hmm.
or shoot it to
Yeah.
me in an email, and I'll look at it and see what we got
Okay.
going there. Yeah, that's great,
But no.
and
Hmm.
that's good information to know because everybody may not what you and I both have seen. These guys will think they'll look on the VA.gov and they'll think, and they do make it sound easy, that they know how to do it or they're going to do it the way they want to do it. And
Hmm.
that's the first rule, too. You can't do it the way you want to do it. You have to do it the way the VA requires it to be done.
Right.
And you got to do it in the order they require it to be done. You immediately, for example, can't go and hire an attorney or go to the Board of Veterans Appeals until you've been denied.
Hmm.
A guy told me, "Well, I'm just going to go right straight to the court." You can't do that. You
No.
know,
Can't pass
it's
go. This ain't Monopoly.
right, right. And
This ain't
so,
Monopoly.
for the web page that you mentioned, and VA the Redneck Way, those web pages are great to help give you directions. But guys, I can't point out the importance of following those directions, following those steps, step by
Okay.
step, and you'll be okay.
Okay. Well, once you get the situation going, they say you got your intent to file done, and you've got what you want to do. You know what you want to file for, but now you're just trying to gather what records you need. If you go to the VA for treatment, folks, go ahead and file your claim because all they need is your service records and the VA records. If you go outside the VA, it would be better off if you did this. Uh, Contact your doctor's office and get copies of all the records pertinent to your issue that you're having. You might have to send off in the mail to do it because it could be far away. It could be local. Do the Freedom of Information request and do whatever it is. Some places will charge you probably a certain amount of money unless it's basically the first copy. It depends on which doctor's office it is because they're all different. Get that information, scan it into a computer, okay, and assign it a file number. Once you get it in there, each issue is going to have a separate file number, and you take that file number and you name it whatever, and attach it to that claim as far as what it's all about. Then, when you go into your 21-5-26 EZ, that's the form number you fill out for initial claim on VA.gov. It'll tell you what you're doing, and you start filling it out. There's a section on it to upload information. You can highlight the file for this section and upload it. Next section, upload it. You can upload everything electronically so you know they'll get it. A lot of folks trust the U.S. mail. I, for one, don't. And there's a long history, I'm an old fart anyway, so there's a long history behind that, right?
Yeah.
And you can upload that information and it'll make things go smoother. But now you got a decision to make. Once you get her done and get everything turned in, the waiting game begins. Uh, Peer is probably one of the most uh, stressful, I guess to say, areas that you'll go through, especially if you've got a lot of serious disabilities and you can't work and you're waiting on this as your livelihood. You know, you can actually uh, you got to make a decision. What am I going to do? Um, do I get help or do I not get help or what? Do I drive this vehicle myself or do I get somebody to help me drive it? And we had these shows before, guys, but personally, I'd recommend you get an accredited veteran service officer through one of the state agencies, or the American Legion, or the VFW, or the DAV, or an accredited appeals agent that does do initial claims but doesn't charge for initial claims, which they really can't charge for initial claims, but you got to find one that does it. One of those people that are accredited, that's the key word is accredited, and they have to have access to the Veterans Benefit Management System or VBMS. That way, you're not calling the VA every 2 days. Hey, what's going on with my claim? All they got to do is sit back, and you can call them once a week or so and talk to them. They can give you an update, or they can call you when they see an update. That's like watching your claim in real time. So that's what I recommend doing. Um, I don't really recommend anybody go alone, do this alone, because I've seen so many people destroyed because of that. I've seen so much. That's carnage. Is what it is. Because them folks definitely know what they're doing, and they know you don't. you know, and they turn into P.T. Barnum. He's a sucker born every minute. You know what I mean, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Hmm.
guys, there's one thing there that I found out was helpful for me. Um, you mentioned getting your VA medical records, which is what I had. I took those VA medical records, and when I was ready to file my claim on a 4138, put a note, please look at page such and such, paragraph such and such, or then I made a copy of just that one page that I wanted them to look at, and I highlighted or I circled it. And the one that you definitely want to make sure is a diagnosis, because they have a tendency to overlook a diagnosis, or a lot of times, and this is what I've seen recently in the VA medical system, they're not giving a direct diagnosis. I have a gentleman here locally in Winchester, Tennessee, who just recently, after more than a year, they kept saying, well, you have Parkinson's symptoms. Do you have
Hmm.
Parkinson's disease? Well, we're not ready to say that yet, but you have symptoms. Can we see you in 90 days? Or come back next month? Or
What's they got
let's
to do with
go
his
do
claim?
this.
Because
Well,
what's they
bec-
got to do with his claim?
because if you don't have that diagnosis,
Hmm.
they're not going to
They changed
approve
it.
that. They're not going to approve
They
that.
tr- they changed it to Parkinsonians, which is a symptoms that mimic Parkinson's that are not totally all Parkinson's because it's all in the head. As far how that issue goes.
Well, yeah, that's true. I use that as an
Hmm.
example because that's what's going
Hmm.
on or what went on here.
Yeah.
But when I first went in concerning neuropathy,
Hmm.
it took them almost a year before
Yes.
they agreed and put into my records that I had diabetic neuropathy.
Hmm.
And
Was that
then it was
before
in,
or after? Before or after you had the test?
oh, that was even after I had the test. That was even,
Yeah.
they had already stuck needles in the bottom of my foot.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and
Okay.
then I got the same situation. Well, I need to see you let me see you next month, or let me see you in 3 months. And then
Hmm.
finally, once the guy finally, after about, I think they did the test 3 times, or 3 different appointments. So probably over a 6 month period of time. He finally came in after that last one and says, okay, yeah, you definitely now, I'm for sure you have diabetic neuropathy. So I'm going to put you in for some diabetic shoes. And that was another big clincher for me winning my case because now I had an official, not only the diagnosis, but I had treatment for the diagnosis. And those were important things to point out. And then another thing
Hmm.
that I did here, I think it's always a good thing to do. I know James recommends this. I know in a way you recommend it too. We recommends Bethany for some of this, but sometimes
Oh yeah,
it's good to get a second opinion. Now,
yeah.
you if you get a second opinion, this is the way I have done it and been successful with it. I don't know if it'll work every time or not, but I know it has worked for me. I will take my diagnosis, like I took exactly that final report
Hmm.
that he said I had diabetic neuropathy and recommended AFO braces and new shoes and all of that. I took that medical report for that visit, which was 2 pages. I highlighted where he said the diagnosis. It said diabetic neuropathy. I highlighted that, and then down at the bottom where it said treatment recommended AFO braces and diabetic shoes. And so I took that and I went to a local podiatrist, and I went into him. I said, handed him that. And I said, this is what they say I have. Will you check me and concur with that
Hmm.
diagnosis? And do you recommend the same type of treatment? So he got me on the table. He stuck some needles in the bottom of my feet, took a monofilament and ran up and down my feet and over
Hmm.
my ankles. And he said, yes, you have diabetic neuropathy. I said, would you write me a letter and recommend the type of treatment that you would recommend?
Hmm.
So he wrote the letter and he said, I concur with the VA Dr. Penn, podiatrist Dr. Penn. He
Hmm.
does have diabetic neuropathy, but I think the treatment might need to be a little stronger instead of the, I call them fiberglass, but it's some type of a fiber brace.
Hmm.
I
It's a carbon
recommend,
fiber brace.
yeah, I'd recommend a metal brace which goes underneath the heel of his shoe and his arch. So other than that, that was the only thing. Now, here's
Hmm.
the clincher. It cost me $120 out of my pocket because I had no other insurance except VA. So I paid $120. But
Hmm.
that actually got me $700 or $800 a month. So that was $120 well invested, along with about 6 or 8 months of back pay.
Right.
So that was a pretty good chunk of money for $120 invested. Now, um, be honest with the doctor when you schedule your appointment. I've been diagnosed with this. I want a second opinion. And make sure they know that at
Hmm.
first, because some doctors will not give second opinions. Some
Oh,
doctors will
seen
only
it.
see you if you're going to use them as their as
If they're
taking
going to
care of
treat
that
you.
is, yeah, if that they're going to do
Yeah.
the treatment. So make
Hmm.
sure you understand that so you don't waste your time and money, because you'll get there and they'll check you out and they'll agree with what you got, and then they'll send you on your way without a letter. Or they'll write you a letter, and if you do get a letter, it says, no, I disagree. He doesn't have this. He has this instead. And whatever he says you had doesn't agree with what the doctor says or what your claim is. When you walk out the door, find the nearest trash can, wad it up, and throw it in, and take that $120 as expenses. You know, uh,
Write it off.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
what you
Just
what you're talking about, though, anytime you have to have AFOs, I mean, you're getting into higher levels of fixed monthly compensation, which is over and above 100%. And of course, we discuss that all the time, anyways. And of course, if you have diabetes and you're servicing after your diabetes and you're still pretty new to the game and you don't have all these issues, but eventually you probably will. So it's better to keep this stuff in mind. Now, I'm not Nostradamus, so I don't know how to prognosticate what they're going to do down the road. Um, Things will probably change, in the scope of the VA as far as ratings, 20, 30, 40 years from now. They always have and they always will. Maybe no major changes, but, once you get that level and you start to say they have to give you braces, and that's basically considered a lost use of the foot, of the foot. And that requires a higher level of aid attendance, because you're going to have help anyway. So once you get to where you can't walk, you got to have somebody to help you.
Now, when I
And
got my
call an
first
ambulance.
one, John, when I got my first one, I just had diabetic neuropathy and diabetic shoes, but I
Hmm.
still uh, went to the doctor in Tullahoma just to
Hmm.
confirm that I had diabetic neuropathy.
Right. Did they give
And
you an extra K for that?
well, I'm not sure. I got a 60% rating on
Hmm.
one foot.
Should be
I mean,
60. That's the same as loss of use on one
okay,
foot.
they
And
didn't give me the L at that time. They didn't give me the L
uh,
until I got
they
my
might have given you a
braces.
K. They might have
May
given you a
have.
K. Hmm. But
But
the
they
braces are the
rated
biggest issue.
but they rated me at 60% with diabetic neuropathy, and then later on they gave me an L for loss of use of the foot. But that was
Hmm.
2 years later. It was 2 years after I first was diagnosed with diabetic neuropathy before I had to start wearing before I had foot drop and I had to start wearing braces. So that was 2 years later.
Hmm. Well, that's good. I mean, once the biggest issue is when you get rated by the VA for anything, regardless if it's diabetic neuropathy or hypertension, heart disease, you have to make sure you're rated correctly
That's right.
because, and so you got to know what's wrong with you. You got to know, and you need to read your stuff. You need to get on you need to get on to the notes in VA.gov. You need to read your notes if the doctor's right. Go down to toward the bottom, and then all the diagnosis stuff are usually in the last 2 or 3 paragraphs. You can see that. You can look through the other stuff, and it's kind of to me, it's a different language. But you get down to the assessment and the plan, and that's where you start seeing the gravy and the gravy and the dumplings and the chicken. That's what you got to eat. You got to look at that because that's what controls the environment. Uh, that's how you stay on track, and it helps you get your claim notified. You could look at that. Then, what I'd also do, if you have time on your hands, which you need to make time, I'd do it on the evenings or weekends or whatever. I'd get on the computer, sit down, and I'd start looking up Title 38 CFR Part 3 and Part 4, and I'd start reading. You're going to have to read it more than once because, again, it's a different language, and you won't understand it. At the first time reading, you won't understand nothing. Once you get a little more comfortable read it, start understanding little sections, it's kind of like reading the Bible, all the vowels and this and that. Now, once you read the Bible enough, you understand what it's about. Very similar. Uh, Kind of get a handle on it. It's okay. Here's what I have, and here's what the regs say. So you should know about what you're going to be rated in the neighborhood, anyways, for what they say. And contrary to popular belief, the regs are boss. That means that it's a federal statute, and yet they have to abide by that. Of course, the VA uses a internal thing called the M21, which is their working copy, and basically it's a derivative of the Title 38, but you can't use it in the higher level appeals like the BVA or the court. They'll be like uh, they'll be like magic or lots of things. Shaquille O'Neal, you're trying to shoot a shot over Shaquille O'Neal, he'll slap it out of there, get the thing out of here. I've seen them get mad and say, "Get that out of here! I don't want to see that." So we don't want to take the M21 to the board of the court, do we, Brad?
No, matter of fact, I wouldn't even look at the M21. John, I found a good place for referencing the 38 CFR codes and the
Uh-huh.
ratings is Princeton University Law School.
Oh yes,
Uh,
they are very, very good.
and for me, it put it in language that I could read and understand. And you can go down through there, you can put in your diagnosis or what you want to look up, do a search, and it'll pop up and you can read about it. And but I found that that was, for lack of a better term, the easiest one for me to read and understand. And you can
Hmm.
get to it right there. You know, you can Google it, and it'll come right up, and click it on, and start looking and reading.
Occasionally they'll take a claim. You know that those students will take a veteran's claim and work
No,
on it.
I did not.
Hmm. Yep, they used to. I don't know if they do it now or not. There's so much stuff going on now with these schools and stuff like that. You know, things a little bit different. But I check into it. You know, but um, so you got your help, and your help's telling you this and that. They're doing this and that, and so they say, well, we got to send you out for an exam. So you get a little notification, and Joe Veteran, you're going to go out to an exam, and it's going to be exams going to be performed by, let's use one out of there, Veterans Evaluation Services, VES, and they'll contact you and they'll set up your exam. You go to the exam, you have your exam, you go back home, you wait, and you get your mileage check in the mail. So when you get your mileage check, you know it's already sent back to the VA. So then you call your rep up, say, hey, any movement on this claim? They'll tell you what's going on, and he'll give you the information, and you'll have your decision fairly soon. Depends on how complex your claim is and what issues you have, and how fast they work it. And once you get your rating, look at it and make sure you're rated the way you think it should be rated, and look at all the information that you get in your decision. Because it should tell you what evidence they used and things like that, and you know the evidence you submitted, so you can, A, B, C, D. And if you see something that's not right, you can talk to your agent, and you can appeal it. Or if you get denied, you can appeal it. That's a big question. So once you get a denial letter or you disagree with the decision, the appeals process goes to a whole different ballgame. They offer you three levels of appeal. Okay, the first level is called a high level review, which means a high level reviewer will look at it and it's sent out to a different office. It's the same person that did your thing. They look at it and they either make another decision, send you for another exam, or send it back to the regional office, or they deny it. If they deny it, you're going to have to go to the other appeal process called a supplemental appeal. Okay. Well, basically, supplemental appeal means that under a high level review, it's on its face of what they have. You cannot submit new evidence. But say you got some more medical tests you want to submit, so if you're in the supplemental end, you can now submit them. Okay, and they'll make a decision based on that. Now,
Well, another good point at that, this needs to be explained. When you're at that higher level review, you're not allowed to point out anything that they may have missed. Where on a
mhm,
supplemental review, if you have an agent, or perhaps you can talk to the regional person yourself, or you can at least submit 4138 that directs them to something in your medical records that you think or you wasn't mentioned that they have overlooked. And that, to me, that is a tremendous advantage with that supplemental claim, because you
yeah,
do have some input, whether it's new evidence or whether it's pointing out existing evidence that they did not look. I mean, come on, guys. When I first got into this working my claims, when I was about halfway through, I went down and asked for my medical records. And they said, we can't give them to you today. He said, we'll have to burn you a CD. I said, okay. When I got that CD, it had almost 3,000 pages of medical records and notes. Well, what is it the time, John? I think you know the time length that they usually give a guy, 15 minutes, 20 minutes at the most to look at a case and build it or whatever. They don't give them very long. They can't sit there and take the
uh,
time that you and I do or someone else to make sure that it goes right. So,
right,
you got to kind of uh, look at yourself. You got, at that point. And then if you find
mm,
something there, that's when you reach out to the John Stacey's and say, who do you recommend to work this type of a
mhm,
case? Or who do you know that would be interested in this type of a case? And go from there.
right,
Yeah. Yeah, you might give up 20% of your back pay, but it's better to give up 20% of the
mhm,
back pay and get two or $3,000 a month rather than to get zero.
mhm. He's talking about the VA accredited claims agent or appeals agents.
Correct.
And these guys are specialists in what they do. They basically have the same education level as most of the VA employees do. I mean, they take the same, they take the test, and they know what they're doing, and a lot of them are very successful. And I know several of them. We've had a bunch on the show, and I'm friends with several of them. So, I know the ones that are, that are good at what they do. They're very busy. Don't get me wrong, a lot of guys have a lot of clients, but they're extremely busy. And, if you guys are looking for one, go ahead and send in a question to exposethat@gmail.com and ask, and Rare R1 will jump on there, and we'll put you in the right direction anyways, in the right area.
Yeah,
And
maybe even
but
maybe even a couple. And that's something else. You're 100% correct. I would actually interview them or talk with them,
hmm
and you got to feel comfortable with them, and they got to feel comfortable with you. And that's another important thing. I know that a couple that I had here locally didn't go with the first person I recommended. A couple of different reasons. One,
hmm
I have no idea what was said, but anyway, they just didn't quite match up. So the second one they matched up great, and it worked out great, and the guy won his claim. So
hmm
there's sometimes another one was so busy he couldn't take it, but he referred him to another agent that was
hmm
able to take him and help him. So it's a networking type of a thing that we can help the veteran do.
hmm That's a good deal, And of course, I know several. It also depends on what the claim's all about too,
Yeah,
because some of these guys got certain levels of expertise, and you got to focus on that because they've already done so many of these claims, and they've already been to the court and been everywhere else, or to the board, and I got a couple that can actually go to the court and practice in front of the court. So, it's all pretty good. But anyhow, that's the claims situation and going into appeals process in kind of a nutshell. Um, we'll talk about the Board of Veteran Appeals. That's the third and final option you have. Uh, you can take a BVA claim. You can file straight to the board after you get a denial. You don't have to go through the HLR or the supplemental claim. Like if they screwed your claim up, go straight to the BVA. Okay, and problem is the BVA, they've got different avenues too. They've got a direct docket review, which basically right now is probably 16 to 18 to 24 months, depending on the claim itself, as far as the veteran being seen. Um, there's you can go to DC. That's supposed to be the fastest route. I don't know the time limit on it yet, but you can take a trip out to I'd go to Northern Virginia and ride the train in. I wouldn't go nowhere near DC. You can go over there and you can go to your hearing there at the Board of Veteran Appeals. His rep will go with you. Of course, you have to pay his way, but it's that's what it is. Um, they used to have a travel board, right? You remember the old travel board?
that's what I went to the first time.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the guy um, played basketball in the room. Remember, he he
Mm-hmm.
threw the wadded up paper around and bounced off of four walls before it
Well, he
landed
was looking
beside my
for.
chair.
I thought he was trying to hit that guy in the head.
Well, he does, and he missed and almost hit James Cripps, who was sitting behind him.
Yeah, but James was busy kicking that chair.
He was. We probably need to
Oh
tell
my.
that so these guys would understand what we're talking about. Folks, I was
Mm-hmm.
in this travel board with a judge. My wife Pam was in there, and a gentleman by the name of Milton Sweeney, who was supposed to be my state rep, and then James Cripps was there as a supporter. You're allowed. I couldn't take an attorney with me, but I could take a supporter. So James was there to support. Well, we start off, and mine, because of it was Agent Orange exposed in the continental United States, had to be a direct exposure. It could not be an assumption. Well, my Milton Sweeney, my agent, started down the road of assumption, and we were about halfway through it, and James recognized where the judge was going, and by the questions he was asking, and the way it was being answered, the judge was about ready, wasn't too far from making a decision on an assumption. And James keeps kicking the chair about the fourth or fifth time, kicked it pretty hard, and the guy jumped, and the judge heard it. He said, "Are we talking about an assumption or direct exposure?" James and I both spoke up, said, "Direct exposure." And that state agent just sit there like, "Huh?" You know, uh, deer in the headlights look. And he wadded that sheet of paper up that he'd been taking these notes on for 30 minutes, reared back and threw it at that agent, went beside his head, bounced off of two walls. James had to duck, and it landed in the chair beside me. And he said, "Let's start over." Opened a desk drawer, and this time pulled out a blue pad. The other was yellow. Pulled out a blue pad, and he said, "We're going to start all over again." And he started asking, and the questions were totally different. But I ended up winning my case for Agent Orange exposure in the continental United States at Fort McKellar. But
Looks like you won.
yeah, and that's the way it worked. That's the way that traveling board worked, and it was pretty good. You could go to Washington, or you could do it on the local level.
Mhm. Now they got video conference, right?
That's correct. I've had two or three
Yeah.
people here who's gone the video conference route.
Hmm. That's the other step, you know. Basically, I think that's take over. That's taking the place of the travel board. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's
The
my
travel board.
understanding, and it sounds
Yeah.
like that's how it works because the individuals that I knew here went down. They went down to the same office that I went to in the
Hmm.
regional building, and went into a little room, and they actually had a computer set up on probably oh, I don't know. I think mine's about a 29-inch TV screen here in front of me that I have on a large TV screen anyway. And
Hmm.
that's where and you see the judge, and the judge sees you. They have the split screen just like we have now that you and I are
Hmm.
watching. And so you can see the reaction as things are said. Um, you have a if you have an agent, like the two people that I recommended here had an agent, and the agent is the third person on that screen. And he takes the place of the local state agent, which I had a local state agent, but now he took the place of that state agent and can really kind of, except for a couple of three questions, handle the entire claim.
Yeah, they drive the truck. I mean, that's their job, and they do it.
Hmm.
Uh, Grandfather's very similar. He had his wife and his daughter to help him ambulate into the hearing. Um, he had his rep, John Dorley, who's a good accredited claims agent, folks. But bad news is he's kind of retiring, so he's not taking new cases. Um, then he had another guy that worked with him, Dr. Bash, and they had some. They had their hearing and let Dr. Bash speak, and he kind of explained his situation to the court or to the judge, and it worked. And they treated him pretty bad throughout his years. He's a World War II vet, and of course, he won, and didn't live long enough to enjoy the money, but still, the money helped the family out a whole lot. And so we started with that, and that kind of makes it makes you feel better. You don't want to give up because basically, if you're down and out, and your livelihood depends on this, and you win your claim, that's probably the most happy you'll be in your entire life, besides the birth of a child.
That's right.
And but the situation reverses after a period of about 1 to 2 months. Once it sets in, and you've done what you have to do, and you realize you've got a good income coming in, you've got some money or whatever, then you're going to go through a period of depression because now you realize that you're part of the boogered up boys club, and it does. Because your certain conditions will cause you to have a certain amount of depression because you can't do what you used to do anymore,
That's for
and
sure.
uh, and that's also a rateable issue.
Yep.
Okay, so um, but just keep in mind that's going to happen. People don't
And
get it. Now it's not going to happen to me. It'll happen.
that's another thing, great, John. I'm glad you brought that up because what you need to do, guys, when that happens, and it will happen, there's no question. I don't know what severity. Everybody's different, but seek out some counseling. I mean, your primary care doctor is supposed to have a social worker assigned to you. get with that social worker. Get to working with on that because you may end up if you end up like I did. And I was so angry and so upset about it that I actually end up with what they called depression with high anxiety attacks. And they gave me 100% for that about 2 years after that, and said it was permanent. And it still is. There's sometimes things can happen, um, not necessarily just with the VA, but the other day I had something happen with an insurance company, and I flew off the handle, just as if it was with the VA. And
Oh, I done it.
so it doesn't go away. You just learn. You try to learn to control it.
Hmm.
But yeah, I recommend that you reach out, and then depending on what that social worker and primary care doctor says, you may even have a claim there. I know a lot of guys that have 30, 40%, 50%. Then
Hmm.
there's two guys I know have 100%.
Right. Hmm. I'm similar to both you are, Ray. Of course, they get mine on they call it an adjustment disorder, depression, anxiety. But then they finally got it worked out. And they changed it to full-fledged PTSD. They did a couple years ago, and of course I got the stress report. So it just took a long time for them to understand it. But it works out, guys. I mean, and don't be listen to everybody talk. Okay, if you got a question to ask, get on them groups and ask a question. Don't
Yeah,
listen to nobody else. If you're 100% PTSD, the first thing people tell you, they're going to come and get your guns.
no,
No, they're not. The only way they will come and confiscate your weapons is if they determine through a viable source that you are not able to handle your finances and can't pay your bills. That changes everything a little bit as far as that. So, but most people with PTSD can pay their bills and they have somebody that does it, you know.
yeah, or has
And
somebody that works with them. Yeah,
yeah.
family
So,
member,
I mean,
son,
yes,
daughter,
it's called
spouse.
a fiduciary.
Yeah, they work with you.
So,
And the only other ways in which I've unfortunately experienced this with someone, a gentleman called me one night. He had PTSD. I'd helped him win a couple of claims a year or so earlier. And he
mhm,
said, I want to call you and I want to thank you, but I'm fed up with this. They just denied me on this and that. And I'm not going to go through all this again. I'm just going to end it. And I wanted to call you and thank you before I shot myself. I said, shoot yourself. So we started talking, and I was on the phone with him about
mhm,
15 or 20 minutes, and there's a knock at the door. Somebody's at the door. Hold on, let me see. So he gets up and he leaves the phone. I'm thinking, oh gosh, who is it? What's going on? And fortunately, before he called me, he called the VA and told them what he was going to do. And the knock on the door was a gentleman with the sheriff's department. And the
mhm.
guy picked up the phone and said, this is Deputy Sheriff with with Franklin County Sheriff Department. Is this Mr. Cobb? Yeah, this is Ray Cobb. Well, just wanted to let you know we're here now. And yes, he did have a gun sitting beside him. We're going to take the gun and we're going to take him and get some help. So that's
Awesome,
what happened. You know, um, don't know where he
awesome.
is. That was actually the last time I talked with him, and that was at least 3 years ago. So
Hmm.
I have no idea where he went or what happened to him. He was talking about moving out of state earlier to me, moving out of state where his brother was. So I don't know if
Mhm.
that's what he ended up doing or not. I hope he did.
Yeah, I had a good friend in the situation, and it's kind of sad. I mean, I helped him get his 100%. And he actually got murdered at in Alabama. His PTSD, and he blew up on somebody, and the guy shot him, and he
Yep.
didn't make it. He's a good guy too. He's a big fisherman, and so it's pretty sad. But one thing about having PTSD and these issues, you have to train yourself not to let it run your life. That's how you have to do it. You got to train yourself, and always give
Yeah.
yourself something to look forward to. You know, but um, you were talking about your issue. Tell you a little story about mine. Um, I don't think Ray's ever heard this story. I'll tell it. I'm not going to tell the whole thing because it got a lot of bad stuff involved with it. Of course, I was a good guy, I wasn't a bad guy. Uh, I had several episodes of super high blood pressure in service. Um, had like 7, 8 readings, and 6 of those, with the bottom line was over 100. And that's class 2 hypertension. Anytime your bottom number gets over 100, that's pretty much hypertension. And then the first full service year, I went to see my doctor, and he said, "Son, you got hypertension," and he diagnosed me with that, and told me I was fat. And he said, "We're going to control your blood pressure. We're going to try it with diet first." He said, "Come back tomorrow and we'll check it again." I went back the next day and it's higher. So he told me what to eat and things like that, and then come back and see him. Well, I actually had moved. I got a job with the government and moved with their physical things like that, and couldn't go back to him. I went to another doctor here in another town in Kentucky. So I filed a VA claim and they denied it because they didn't have the service records. The old 3.156C issue, right? You remember those don't have your
I,
service records and deny you?
yeah, I've seen those. Yeah.
And this went on for 7 or 8 years. They couldn't find them. They finally found them. So I asked to reopen the claim based on the evidence, and do it right. I got a letter back saying that those records are not relevant anyway. So I became very depressed and let it go, give up on it.
And that's what they
Two
want
years
you to
later,
do.
hmm 2 years later, I filed it again, went to a COP exam and got rated, and got back to a certain date. Didn't get everything I needed, but so later on, I filed a claim unmistakable error claim, a Q claim, stating that they're wrong by law. So they deny it. It goes to the BBA, and I sit there for 25 months waiting on it. They judge looked at it and denied it. We asked them to reconsider it, denied it again. So I found me a lawyer, took it to court, and they're still writing briefs. So the next one is due sometime this month. This is June, ain't it?
Yes.
But basically, what they're saying is hypertension has to be measured 3 times on 3 separate days. That's well and good for now. But in 1990, God Almighty, I can't remember now. Back in 1980s and 1990s, the only 3 readings was basically for anything over 10%. And you had to be compensable within the first post-service year, and that should be a presumptive, right, Ray?
Correct. That would be my understanding or my
So
thinking
that's the
anyway.
cue. And the regs changed, and they started doing that. But this is before the regs even changed. So that's the issue with the court. So we'll see how that goes. And there's some other stuff going on too we're hobbling about, but I think it's fixing to work out. And but I just finally got tired. So okay, let's just take it to court, see what happens. And now, so we're seeing what happens. And one of those agent attorneys I'm talking about is working on it. Him and another law group, and they're pretty good. So once everything gets settled and done, I can talk more about it. I'll give you guys some information if you need to contact them or whatever. I'm sure they'll appreciate it. And that's just one of many information that I have as far as service connections. So um,
The main thing, John, that you and I did, and James
mhm.
Cripp did, and Alex Graham has done, you don't give up.
Do what you got to do. Anytime you have an issue that aggravates you, every time you think about it, because this situation, I mean, the more I thought about it, the madder I got. It's not healthy, guys. I sit down, what's going on? I went and collected every blood pressure reading I ever had in every doctor's office that I could get them from. So I sit down in Excel and made a chart. I put the date, the blood pressure, where I had it done at, what they said. And I did over 98 of them throughout my entire lifetime, from the time I was an 18-year-old or 16-year-old, 17-year-old, or whatever. Of course, they had 2 readings I didn't know I took. I guess they just put them in there to make the numbers look lower. I don't know how they did it, but that's to me that's kind of shady. And out of all those blood pressure readings, the bottom average is over 100. That's over 30 some years. I'm lucky to be here, you know. Yeah. Of course, I had. Hmm. Hmm. So your blood pressure. Have you got your paperwork? Have you got it? You don't. Well, it's time you get busy and ask for it. It don't matter. We need to see that basically that you're rated correctly, right? You're rated correctly now because you don't get no higher. But mhm, okay, hmm, you should within the first within the first post service year because you got out when what year? 71. The regs basically were the same as mine were at the time. So yeah, I'd get it just for kicks and giggles, anyways, and look at it. You know, yeah, mhm, right. Hmm. Because that was that situation, they didn't look at it, and it was evidence and that was in possession of the government and not submitted. That's 3.156C claim. No, you can't use him until until they deny it, and you got to fight it. But you shouldn't have to. Hmm. Well, when they deny you, okay. And what were you rated before you got your? Okay, okay. You need to look at that decision. You still got the decision. I know you do. Well, now you can go on to V. You can go on to VA.gov and look it up. Read the evidence that they had, and see if it's got it on it. Then you find that evidence that you've got, and you see if they don't have it. Guess what? That makes it 3.156C. That's legal error. Okay, that's awesome. That is awesome. See, we learn something every day, Ray. Yep. Hmm. 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 Uh, in my years of doing this, I'm going to come across one or two people that had an idea. Uh, the one that I think that's the most educated on this situation in the Title 38 CFR Part 3 and Part 4 is a guy named Bill Krieger. He lives in Virginia, and he's an ex-Marine. He's fully retired now, though he's had some issues. But and the reason he knows this stuff is because he wrote most of it. So, hmm and he's pretty sharp. But I do want to say something, guys, before we close out the show. We got about 4 minutes left. We'll talk about independent medical opinions real quick. If you got some medical issues and you get denied, and you say you want to go into the supplemental lane, you need some help. Of course, you got a year to file your appeal. You can go ahead and do that. But I would think about getting an independent medical opinion at that time because the VA is not going to help you. Uh, I can't come out straight up and say, here, use this or that one, but the one I do recommend is Valor for Vet. That's Bethany Spangenberg's company. And you can ask for an IMO or an IME. The difference is the independent medical opinion is the O, and the independent medical examination is the E, so you might have to go up and see somebody and be examined. Uh, I've seen her work. She does good work. She also has a team of doctors that do stuff, and she's got people all over the place. And she has a doctor that actually looks at her work and goes along with her, and also, like Ray said, make a concurrent opinion. And that kind of stacks it. And because all you need to do to prove your claim is to prove 50% of the evidence is in your favor. It's called benefit of the doubt. Relative equipoise. That's the word that the VA uses. And another quick point, there is a bill right now in committee at the U.S. House. This bill is probably going to go to the floor here pretty soon. And it's going to be put out because some high-ranking officials are on top of it. It's a bipartisan bill, Republican and Democrat. It is going to take the new and relevant evidence section out of the VA. It's going to do it, and it's going to make them basically rate every veteran's claim on its own merits. Did you know that, Ray? Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. 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 Look into it. Yeah. Yeah. Better work. Mm-hmm. That's good. Okay. I'll send it to you. I'll just send you the star. I'll send you the stars and stripes article. It's got it on there. Okay. But folks, that's about all we got for tonight. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll see you next week with another guest and another VA topic. We don't run out of VA topics, do we, Ray? Okay. Well, on behalf of Mr. Ray Cobb and John Stacy, we'll see you next week. We'll be signing off for now. Good night.